Good evening. My name is Moses Moini, and I'm the Refugee Program Coordinator for Mennonite Central Committee in Ontario. I'm delighted that you could join us this evening for the 1-hour webinar on matching and process update. Thanks for your continued dedication and commitment to welcome some of the most vulnerable people into your communities. We are so thankful. Before I introduce you to my colleagues, I want to highlight how thankful we are for your patience during this time as you either wait to be matched or for the family that you have sponsored to arrive. In terms of our presentation today, my colleagues, Kelly Perez and Peggy Pickett, will walk you through the presentation. The presentation will address the questions that you have sent to us earlier and provide further additional information as we have been provided with by Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada. Over to you, Peggy.
Thank you, Moses. We'd like to start the webinar today with just a story from one of our sponsorship groups.
Slide difficulties.
Okay, so the slide's not changing. I'll just go ahead. Riding bikes, navigating the TTC, decoding the mysteries of bank accounts, and connecting with other Syrian families. It's hard to believe that it is barely 2 months since our Syrian family arrived in Toronto. They are settled in an apartment. The 3 older children are attending the local school. The parents are involved in ESL classes. Healthcare is falling into place, and we are happy to say they are beginning to look forward to the future. While their health is good, dental care has been an enormous, complicated, time-consuming priority for both them and us. The whole family has multiple cavities and other dental issues and have not had dental care for years. Such rapid progress has come about thanks to the intense efforts of our group members, additional volunteers, and of course the family themselves. Many group members have devoted countless hours to arranging medical and dental appointments, immigration procedures, job interviews, educational requirements and needs, and in orienting them to shopping, schools, government processes, and of course, the TTC. We've been supported in these efforts by settlement workers, a cadre of translators and volunteers from the larger community group. Professionals in the community, including dentists, retired teachers, and even an Arabic-speaking banker, have come forward to assist the family. As spring arrives and the weather begins to warm up, we are looking toward helping our family learn more about street safety and finding good summer activities for the children. Throughout the process, we have learned as much from our family as they have from us. One of the most important responsibilities that we have and will continue to have is providing the emotional and social support that not only helps orient them to life in Canada, but lets them know that they are welcome here. And we value their friendship too. As our group leader recently said, they are always kind, open-hearted, funny. We're so lucky to know them.
Thanks for sharing that, Peggy. This illustrates an example of one of our group's wonderful experiences with the newcomer family that they were matched with. And we know that many of you are eagerly awaiting this moment, eagerly awaiting to be matched and share in this experience. So let's talk about how we can eventually get you there. So today's focus, as Moses mentioned, will be the matching and processing update. And so to begin, we're going to go through some acronyms. As I'm sure you've quickly learned, in the sponsorship world, there are hundreds of acronyms. And actually, before we get there, if you think of a question that you did not submit earlier throughout the duration of this webinar, feel free to email refugee@mcco.ca. Our colleague Sarah will be monitoring that email throughout this hour, and we'll do our best to respond to those questions at that time. So acronyms.
Well, and Sarah, say hi.
Oh, yes.
Hello. You may see Sarah popping us the little Post-it notes. Those are the questions that she's receiving. So acronyms, there's lots of acronyms. This is just a taste of the acronyms in our world, but ones that come across an awful lot, and we forget and we use them a lot. So we receive a lot of feedback from you, our CGs, saying, so just exactly what is MCC or MCCO, Mennonite Central Committee, which is the national charity. It's actually an international worldwide charity. Mennonite Central Committee Ontario is our provincial branch, and we shorten it to MCCO. RSTP stands for Refugee Sponsorship Training Program. This is another nonprofit organization, and it's an agency that the government contracts for different services. IRCC is Immigration, Refugee, and Citizenship Canada. Up until October of last year, you may have known this as CIC, and with the new government and their focus on refugees, they changed the name of the ministry. SAW, or SAH, that's the sponsorship agreement holder, and that defines us in our relationship. We hold the sponsorship agreement with the government. A GAR, a GAR, is a government-assisted refugee. So as you are sponsoring a refugee to come, the government sponsors refugees for resettlement. And it's not working anymore. Oh, there we go. CG is a constituent group, and that's you. We're the SAW, you're the CG. And not to be confused with a community group or a group of 5. As you are a constituent group. You may be members of the community, so you've come together as a group from the community, but it's specifically defined within the sponsorship program. A community group is a different way to sponsor a refugee, and they don't use a SAW. They're not in relationship with a SAW. So on all the documents and so on that you will be getting, you are a constituent group, not a community group or group of 5. More acronyms. A PSR, that's the overarching program that we are a part of, and that stands for the private sponsorship of refugees. Like, it didn't pop up. So under that, we have the Visa Office Referred, so a VOR. And within the Visa Office Referred program, we have JAS, which is the Joint Assisted Sponsorship, and the Blended Visa Office Referred, or BVOR. And these are important to what we are going to be talking about. These are the keystones to our program, which you are involved in, and we'll get deeper into those. The UNHCR, so this is the United Nations High Commission for Refugees. A NAT. This is a very important thing for you to know about. That's the notification of arrival time, and it's always a really good day when we get those. That's the actual, your family will be arriving on this day. IFH, Interim Federal Health, and all refugees who come qualify for Interim Federal Health, and OHIP. I didn't put OHIP up there because I thought maybe we'd all know what that is. So we're going to talk a little bit now about the refugee program.
Mm-hmm. So we'll start with kind of a big picture position, helping you to understand the different avenues through which refugees become eligible for private sponsorship. So what you have on the screen in front of you there is the definition of a convention refugee. So refugees are forced to flee their home countries for reasons that leave their lives at risk. So they're forced to flee, oftentimes because of war, and they often will travel to a neighboring country, a country next door, as their goal is to find a durable solution so that they are eventually able to return home. And so it is only when a durable solution in the country of exile that they find themselves in is not an option that they then become eligible for resettlement to a country like Canada. And this is really only available to a very small percent of the refugees currently in our world. There are 3 different avenues through which refugees can arrive to Canada. So first is through the private sponsorship program. That is what you are currently involved with. Second is when they are sponsored by the government, as Peggy mentioned, GARS. So the government sponsors refugees to come, and then they are settled through agencies that are contracted by the government to provide settlement supports. And then the third avenue are refugee claimants, and these are refugees that arrive to the Canadian border, either at a port of entry along a border at an airport, or they make an inland claim at an inland local IRCC office, at which point they claim refugee status. They're given a temporary refugee claimant document and a date for their hearing, at which point they begin to fill out the paperwork and prepare for the day of their hearing, where the Canadian court decides whether or not they meet the definition of a convention refugee. If they're accepted, they stay and proceed through the route of becoming a permanent resident, or they are then sent back to their home country. So government-sponsored and privately sponsored refugees arrive to Canada as permanent residents already, as their processing is done overseas. This private sponsorship of refugees program was created in 1979 in response to the Southeast Asia crisis. Many of you will likely remember this as the response to the boat people. And so in 2015, the Syrian crisis was all over the media outlets, and our government responded by making a generous commitment to resettle 25,000 Syrian refugees. And so with that commitment, our work changed drastically from working with just a few groups. On average, we would work with about 8 sponsorship groups to sponsor about 56 refugees, to now we are currently working with just over 220 groups. We've had close to 500 arrivals since April, and so as you can see, our program has dramatically changed. And so what happened between September and February was not the norm. We are now beginning to get a sense of what this new normal will be, and so that's part of this presentation today, is updating you with that information. So this screen here outlines the 3 avenues of private sponsorship that currently exist, and the one that is circled in red there is the focus of today's presentation, but here I'll quickly speak to the 3. So within private sponsorship, the first stream is the visa office referred. So these are cases that are referred to us by a visa office on the ground in the refugee source country. And so there will be either JAS cases, which I'll get into a bit more detail shortly, and then the BVOR cases, the blended visa office referred cases, which many of you are currently working with. The second stream is what's called a named case or full sponsorship, which is not today's focus, but this is when a group knows of a specific refugee or refugee family that they know or have been connected to, and specifically want to name them to bring to Canada. And so that is that second stream. And the third stream is what's called the Group of 5 and community sponsorship groups. So these groups operate separately without the use of a sponsorship agreement holder. So they are a group of people that have come together. They fill out the paperwork either to do a named case sponsorship, or they are also eligible to be matched with BVOR cases. And they submit the paperwork without the use of a sponsorship agreement holder. So the Joint Assistance Sponsorship Program is one of our matching opportunities. These are cases that have been deemed high needs for a variety of different reasons. Sometimes it is because the family is a larger than normal family, so families upwards of 8 to 10 individuals. It is mainly, however, because of a high medical need. So it'll be families where there are children that have special needs, or parents that have special needs such as paralysis, inability to walk, are deaf, high needs medical cases. And so the way that these sponsorships work is they are often for a commitment of 2 to 3 years. and they are fully funded by the government. So the sponsorship group's responsibility is for that settlement support. So you commit to building relationship with this family, helping them with the settlement support, and if there are some medical needs that the government will not fully cover, sponsorship groups oftentimes can come in and support the families with funds for those extra medical needs. They are eligible for interim federal health for the full duration of the sponsorship period. So if it's for 2 years, they will be eligible for IFH during that time. If it's for 3 years, the same thing. And so if your group is open to this, and we have not discussed this with you yet, feel free to be in touch with Peggy or myself, and we can discuss this further and add this to your matching criteria if this type of profile is something your group would be open to considering. Second is the BVOR model. So this one is likely something you are all familiar with. It's the blended cost-sharing program with the government, where the government provides financial support during months 2 to 7 through a direct deposit into the refugee family's account, and then sponsorship groups provide financial support during months 1 and 8 through 12, as well as help top up during months 2 to 7 what the government won't sufficiently provide for. Additionally, they are eligible for IFH, interim federal health, and IFH, just to quickly mention, will cover above and beyond what OHIP will not. And so this covers emergency dental, vision, prosthetics, and prescription drugs. Next is the matching process.
So, the matching process, and this is always an exciting time when we get to matching. Before I get into the process, we've already had a question. Will this webinar be available after the live event is over? Yes, we will be posting this as a live, posting the link to the
Video.
YouTube video. Thank you, Carl. And so yes, it will be available to you and to all of your all the members of your constituent group to watch.
We'll post
over and over and over.
We'll post it on the resources tab on the portal.
So you'll have the link. Carl, when do you think we'll be able to have that available? Tomorrow?
Yeah, tomorrow.
So it should be up there by the end of the day tomorrow. And as you can tell, Sarah is ready and willing to take your questions and pass them on. So the matching process. This is after you as a constituent group have contacted us. We've talked about what it means to work as a constituent group with a sponsorship agreement holder. You decided you're gung-ho and you want to do this with us, and we're so grateful. We work through the paperwork process. We get all of our ducks in a row. You've raised your money. You've signed all your MOUs, and you're ready to be matched. And you tell us, we confirm with you what your matching criteria is: source country, size of family, composition, any other things that you want to consider. And you get on the matching list. So you're on the matching list. Now we need a profile that meets your specifications. And that's where this little wheel starts. We start at the top where you see the red box that says RSTP. RSTP is the Refugee Sponsorship Training Program, and they are contracted by the government to handle the matching process. So they are our liaison between the matching center and us. So RSTP receives the profiles. They create a document that is very basic. So we get on there, whether it's a BVOR or a JAZ case, the number of the profile, so that's the identification number, and the source country, so where is this family from, not where, and quite often where they are right now. So if they're a Syrian family and they are in Beirut, or they're an Eritrean family and they're in Cairo. So just where they might be. How large of a family? It's a family of 4, the ages of the family, and where they want to be resettled in Canada if they have any preference. And that's about all we know. It comes as an Excel spreadsheet or a table, and we receive that. It goes out to all of the sponsorship agreement holders in Canada at the same time. We all review this information, and then we must request back to RSTP which profiles we would like for them to send to us.
And there are currently 95 plus sponsorship agreement holders in Canada.
At our last set of profiles that we received last week, we received 33 profiles. So 95 plus sponsorship agreement holders received 33 profiles. We have right now 49 people on our matching list, 49 groups. So we made our request from the list that we were given. We received one profile. So we then take that profile, and now we go to our matching list. And we start with number one and the profile that we received. And we start to say, does this profile match with our first group on the constituent list, on the matching list? And if it doesn't, then we go to number 2, we go to number 3, we go to number 4, until we get a match between what this profile represents and what we have on our matching list. And when we receive this profile, when we are quote unquote awarded this profile, we receive now a usually 1 to 2 page document about the family. So we know there again the profile number, we know the age, the gender of the individuals involved, and their relationship to the principal applicant. And
Educational history.
we get educational history, we get primary language spoken, if they have other languages other than that, if they have work history or trade skill, and if they have any special settlement needs. So this is where we might find out that even though it's not a jazz case, maybe the father has had an accident and uses a cane to walk, or that 2 of the 3 children have a lazy eye that will require some follow-up. So this is where we start to get to know the family. Sometimes we get more information, a little bit more background about why they had to flee. We don't always receive that information. Sometimes it's there. We know whether or not the family is travel ready. That means that they have completed their medical and security clearance. And one of the questions that we've had, and I'll answer right now, is about urgency. We see urgency on the profiles, level of urgency for resettlement. And we're not sure, nobody has defined for us what those definitions are, but we're pretty much agreed amongst us that all refugees that are made available for resettlement, that their case is urgent. So that's one place where we see the word urgent. The other place where we see it is that I send an email to you, and in the subject line it says urgent. And that urgency, honestly, is about the fact that I have a 24-hour turnaround. So we have a tight timeline. So it is urgent that you pay attention to this email. So that's where you'll see urgent twice. So back to the matching process. So RSTP sends us the profile list. That goes out to that yellow box to all SAWs. We then respond to RSTP on the red box and say this is the profile list that we want. Hallelujah, we get awarded profiles. And you can imagine with the number of profiles we aren't receiving, not everybody gets a match every time. So, and we so far have been quite blessed to have received a profile once every 2 weeks. And you can do the math. I got 49 constituent groups on the matching list. So it's going to take a while to get everybody matched. And we've been told that for vacation time in the summer, matching will be suspended. We don't know what summer means specifically. So, when it's starting and when it's stopping. So we can't answer that question for you right now. There again, It will be posted on the portal as soon as we have that information. So down to the blue box, MCC is awarded a profile, and this is when you will get your first urgent email from me. I will then say, congratulations, we found a profile that matches well enough your group's matching criteria. Here is the profile. We'll send you that 1 or 2 page document, and anything else that we might know or have gleaned, that this is travel ready, that it is not travel ready, and that we require your group to consider this carefully and let us know your decision within 24 hours. And one of the reasons for that 24 hours is if you say no to this profile for whatever reason, it is a real learning experience. As a group, sometimes you learn an awful lot about yourself when you're presented with some hard decisions about a family profile. So if you do say no to it, I need that 24-hour period to be able to find another group for this family. So we do ask that you take that 24 hours and get back to us as soon as possible. So you say yes, then we move to the next red box on the screen that says RSTP and Matching Center. So we inform RSTP that our constituent group named the Gracious Sponsorship Group, located in Listowel, Ontario, has agreed to sponsor this family. Please send us the detailed information as soon as possible. RSTP informs the Matching Center. Matching Center then sends us the detailed profile information. So we might learn a little bit more about the family. We definitely get their names and their birth dates. You learn the names of your family, and that's usually a very special time for our groups. And I get that information. I prepare the sponsorship paperwork on your behalf, send it to you for your review and your signature. There again, this is another urgent 24-hour turnaround. We send that, you send us the completed paperwork, we send it, Moses signs it, and then we send it to CPAL. That's that green box up there. That's the Central Processing Office in Winnipeg. They review your application and they approve it. We haven't had one come back yet. And so it's from that time that the notice that we have our arrival times. From the time that CPAL receives it, the wait for arrival is as little as 4 weeks to 4 months. So, yeah, and truly, our groups tell us that time when they learn the names of their families is one of their very emotional time for the group. So, you've been matched. And you get to do a little dance and jump around. And so some of the questions that we have received about matching that we got in the earlier seminar was, where can we find out where we are on the list? You just have to email Kaylee or I, and we will let you know where you stand on the list. You can ask us how many groups there are ahead of you that have a particular matching criteria that you might have as well. We can tell you that, but you're also welcome to change your matching criteria at any time. So what's ahead of you doesn't necessarily have a lot of bearing about how quickly you'll move, because they could change their matching criteria as easily as you. Nobody goes backwards on the list, so that's good news.
Good news.
Yes, and then the other about suspending over the summer, and we already covered that. So mark the date when you are matched and we've completed your paperwork and sent it to CPAL. That's when you start counting down. So mark that date and keep track of it. We're working with over 220 sponsorship groups, and we do a pretty good job of tracking the process, but you've got one family that you to track. So we ask that you help us track these particularly special dates, that we're coming up to that 4-month mark. What's going on? We've not heard anything. The other thing that we're going to ask you to watch as well is when you receive the profile, You'll be told, one of the pieces of information you'll receive is when the medicals expire. And if you can sort of watch that as well, because we don't want those medicals to expire because that will delay the process. And so help us monitor that, and we will advocate for your family before those medicals get near expiring, and hopefully get the process moved along so we don't face any unnecessary delays.
Mhm.
So, yeah, from matching, 4 weeks to 4 months for arrival. That's the standard arrival time within the BVOR program. And you should receive at least 2 weeks' notice before arrival. So, enough time to get your settlement plan in place.
Mhm. Yeah. So when the unexpected happens, the majority of the cases will flow smoothly, but there are unexpected things that happen, especially given what Peggy likes to call the bubble or the fluid process that we have just come through. There are some unexpected things that have happened. So one of those things can be a medical expiry. So as Peggy mentioned, make sure that you take note of that medical expiration date on your profile. And if you have not heard anything 1 month before that medical expiry date is coming up, then please be in touch with us. At that point, we will flag it to the matching center and request for some further information about what's going to happen with that case. And just to also reiterate, that we, MCC, will only inquire about arrival times or questions on what's happening with a particular case after that 4-month mark. Every time that we make an inquiry to the matching center, that slows down the process for everyone. And so our goal is to be as clear as we can in our communication and to keep the process flowing as smoothly as possible. And so understand with that, it is only after that 4-month standard arrival has passed that we will make an inquiry for you to the matching center. Another reason for delay is often due to security and medical check processing. So we had a question come in about how can you know what it is about a security check that is delaying the process? Truthfully, we will not ever be able to know that. The security check is basically a black hole, and no one really will know the reasons for which there has been a delay, and that is something that CSIS here in Canada will face along with Canada Border Services Agency. And so it is generally unknown. All the information that we receive from the RSTP simply states that the security check is still in process. And that is what, unfortunately, all we will be able to communicate with you at that time. What happens if our match is canceled? Now, MCC will request a replacement case to send to your group, at which point, once we receive it, we will send it to your group for consideration, and then you can accept it if it's something that meets your criteria. Otherwise, if a replacement case is not available, you will then be placed at the top of our matching list, and we will try to get you matched again as quickly as we are able to. Potential reasons for cancellations. Here I'll just reiterate that we do share all of the information that we receive from RSTP with you, and we will share that with you about the cancellation, but we are often given no details as to why. We speculate that it can be for the following reasons. It could be that this particular family has throughout their journey of fleeing, lost track of one of their loved ones, and then maybe all of a sudden that loved one was found, and they were choosing not to travel until this loved one's case had been processed. And so they'll often hold back and wait for that to occur before traveling without them. It can also be a case where the family just doesn't show up on the day of the flight for an unknown reason. Or it can also be that they have been resettled elsewhere or have found a durable solution where they currently are, which is a good reason. So these are some exceptions. The vast minority, it's definitely not commonplace for a case to be canceled, but we want to make you aware that there are some chances that some opportunities where this does happen. And we did have a question come in earlier about, it says, I thought B-VORs were already done with security and medical checks. How can there be delays for those reasons? And that's a great question. So when a profile comes up on the matching list, it means that they are either in the process of undergoing their final security and medical checks or have already undergone those final checks. So for those that have already undergone those final checks, they are deemed to be travel ready and often will travel within that 1 to 4 month mark. Those that are in the process of receiving their final interviews of both the medical and security checks, they have been placed on the matching list because they are close to being finished. They're close to having that final check completed, but there are often delays based on some unexpected circumstances that have come up during that final check that cause delay. And so that is the reason why some B-VORs could be delayed for security or medical reasons. What is next? Notice of arrival.
The notice of arrival. Another happy moment in the life of a constituent group. This is when we actually get the NAT, the notification of arrival time. So the matching center will notify us that the flight has been booked, the visas have been issued, the travel papers are in order, and the family is coming. And here is the flight they're booked on and the airport at which they will arrive. And as soon as we receive that information, we pass it directly on to you, as well as some other settlement information that you'll need immediately, some of the immediate next steps. IRC will also notify you directly of your first interview time with IRCC for the next steps for the government subsidy and paperwork for your family. They come right now, I believe, they're coming with their travel papers stamped with a PR stamp. And so
Permanent residence.
that's,
yes.
oh, there you go, another acronym, PR, permanent residence stamp. So when your refugee family arrives, the moment they touch soil, they are no longer refugees. They are permanent residents of Canada. They have a full right to be here, and we either call them permanent residents or newcomers. They are no longer, and hopefully never again will be, refugees. So our aim is to be your conduit of communication throughout this process with all of these various government agencies, and understand that we're dealing with multiple layers of agencies and government ministries and multinational governments, and we try to be as clear and concise in the communication that we have with you, and we try not to send you unclear information or information that is vague. We try to keep it as clear and concise as possible. It doesn't mean that there won't be questions, but we hope to stave those off right from the get-go. We are your advocate here, and we're part of this journey with you. So, process update, the new normal. We've come through this extraordinary time in our program, this incredible outpouring of love and compassion, and Kaylee calls it that we're actually changing the DNA of our communities by the way that we are approaching and responding and accepting and including. So, you want to talk a little bit more about defining your new normal?
Yes. I should mention, Peggy put together these slides, and I love the graphics that she's picked. So yes, defining normal. What is this? What is this new normal going to look like? So just to kind of overview some of these new norms. So as we've mentioned many times, the new standard of arrival time once you've submitted the undertaking is 4 weeks to 4 months. Pickup for arrivals will now be at the airport. It will no longer be at hotels. IFH, Interim Federal Health, and SIN cards will no longer be processed for the families at the airport. So this is something that sponsorship groups will be responsible to process at their local Service Ontario offices as a group. And so Sarah will make sure to explain that to you in her email to you once you receive notice of arrival time. There's been many questions about the travel loans. Is this going to, moving forward, will this be the responsibility of the refugees? During this past bubble, the Syrian crisis response, Syrians did not have to pay back those travel loans. However, now, as a part of this new norm, if your group was matched after March 1st, or if the family you were matched with had their final interview after March 1st, your refugee family will be responsible to pay back that travel loan. This is actually called the admissibility loan, and it includes the travel expenses that were incurred for them to travel to Canada, as well as those medical checks that they went through on the ground in the source country, or on the ground in the country that they were coming to Canada from. So there is an interest-free period depending on the amount of the loan. After the interest-free period expires, interest at a prime rate will be charged. And so I encourage you to look at page 79 of the RSTP handbook, chapter 7, and there is further information about what that amount would be for your particular family.
The handbook that we refer to constantly and continually, because it's such an excellent resource, is available on our portal.
Yes, under the resources tab. News confusion. So there are many questions that have come through about this. And firstly, I just really want to encourage you to constantly be checking our announcements tab on the portal, as that is where we will post any significant changes that will affect you, our sponsorship groups. So on March 31st, Minister McCallum announced that there would be 10,000 additional private sponsorships to come to Canada. What we currently don't know is if those additional 10,000 will be named sponsorship cases or BVOR cases or a mix of the two. Some of the changes that came after March 31st have not yet been communicated. So we had a question posed about Minister McCallum making an announcement saying that he was going to send back workers back to Jordan and Lebanon temporarily to process these additional 10,000 cases. At this point, we don't know what that will look like or how this will happen. All we do know is that there are going to be 10,000 additional refugees Syrian refugees coming to Canada in 2016. So I'll say that again. All we know is that there are going to be 10,000 additional refugees coming in 2016 from Syria. The SAW Council is in conversation with IRCC, and we will update you when we know anything further. And I'll talk to you a little bit more about the SAW Council in our next slide. There was a question that came in about this. There seems to be confusion about, so here it says, the government was good at providing timelines and destinations for GARs during the 25,000. What is our BVORs, because it's blended with the government, are they considered to be government sponsored or are they considered to be privately sponsored? They are considered to be privately sponsored. So when the government refers to private sponsorship, that includes BVORs. So now, the politics of limits. So it's important to understand that Immigration, Refugee, and Citizenship Canada sets the immigration levels every year. And these limits are put in place to manage the intake and to reduce, with the goal of eventually eliminating backlogs in processing. The BVOR target for this year is 2,400. So the government is committing to bringing through 2,400 individuals. So that's not the number of B4 cases that will be referred, that is the number of individuals total. Last year, the goal ranged between 800 to 1,000, and we know that many more than that actually arrived last year through the B4 program. And so it is important to note this significant increase. And so it's truly incredible. It's a step in the right direction, and we applaud the government for its efforts in doing this. So MCC is a member of the Sponsorship Agreement Holder Association that meets regularly to discuss challenges and to propose solutions. So the SAW Council is a representative voice of the 90+ sponsorship agreement holders in Canada that are mostly part of that association. And so this SAW Council brings our collective joys as well as concerns to the IRCC. And we are doing everything we can to work with the government to bring as many refugees to safety as possible in the best possible way. And so we are very thankful to the government and truly applaud the political will to resettle these refugees. And I was at a meeting just last week with the Southern Ontario SAW Association members, and what the SAW Council reported back to us was they were just so happy to see IRCC's willingness to hear where we are coming from, to engage in conversation with the SAW Council, to be invited to be a part of this multi-year planning for moving forward. This was definitely not the norm under the previous government, and so the SAW Council was just encouraging us to recognize that there are conversations that are happening, and I just want to let you, our groups, know that we hear your frustrations, we share them, and we are bringing that forward to this collective association, which is then bringing it forward to immigration. And so your voices are being heard, and there is conversation and dialogue happening at IRCC levels. So this brings us hope.
Just not change as quickly as we want.
Exactly. It will take time. Definitely. So what to do while you wait? We have a question that came in about communicating with the family that you've been matched with prior to arrival. So during the response to the Syrian crisis over the past few months, we unfortunately were not able to facilitate that communication just because we didn't have the capacity, the matching center didn't have the capacity. But we are currently now moving forward. We are able to facilitate that for you. So it is possible to send a letter of introduction from your group to the family. And so what we ask is that you write it both in English and have it translated into the language that is appropriate for the family that you have been matched with, the language that they speak. Send it to us, at which point we will send through to the matching center, at which point they will try to their best to get to the family. So we can't guarantee that this letter will arrive to the family, but we will do our best to put it through the right channels to make sure that that it is connected to them. Next is some advocacy points. So we would like to encourage you to write or to meet with your local MPs. Refugee Rights Day was this past April 4th, and you likely will have received in our announcements newsletter this letter that we wrote that we sent to our local MPs and to the Minister of Citizenship and Immigration, or Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada. And so we would encourage you to visit the resources tab on our portal. It's not there yet, this letter that we've drafted that you can also use. It's not yet available, but we will have it up, if not by the end of this week, early next week, along with a summary of the key issues that we would like you to bring forward on behalf of our private sponsorship program to your local MP, and some key issues and the summary. So those two sheets should be available on our resources tab very shortly. We also would like to encourage you to check the Canadian Council for Refugees website. The Canadian Council for Refugees is an umbrella organization that works across Canada. So they're a national organization that brings together refugee and immigrant serving organizations. And so they've put together a Take Action toolkit. And so the link for that will also be available on our portal, but we encourage you to Google CCR Take Action Toolkit. They have a guide there that will help you prepare to meet with your MP. What are some important things to come prepared with? And that guide is very helpful for that. And then also explore opportunities on how you can potentially support a government-sponsored refugee through connecting with the local reception center nearest you. Feel free to email Peggy or myself. We can send you a link to a list of all of the reception centers in Canada. Those are the organizations responsible for settling government-sponsored refugees, and we know that they are in need. And also recognizing that there are many refugees that have arrived. There are also refugee claimants in our communities that are in need, and so educate yourselves on the different organizations that exist within your communities that you could potentially reach out to during this time while you're waiting.
Some other things that you can do while you wait, and these are a little bit closer to our home, our wheelhouse. This is about being involved with some of the international humanitarian relief in which MCC is directly involved. The graphic that you see here is about MCC over the past 5 years has provided well over 200,000 school kits, over 140,000 hygiene kits, over 30,000 relief kits, over 126,000 people received emergency food assistance. There's a portable meat canning factory that moves around to locations in Ontario to process and can meat, and they send these cans of meat overseas as supplement food to people who are in emergency situations. So there are ways to get involved. Check out our website about some of these relief kit solutions, whether it's donating money or your time or even putting these kits together. You can support our work on the ground in Syria, in Lebanon, Jordan, Kurdish Iraq. These are just some of the places where we have boots on the ground making a difference. So our peacemaking efforts, this is a lot of advocacy that MCC is involved with, both within our own political system and there again with boots on the ground in working internationally to looking for durable solutions to peace in the world. Some other things, quilts and our relief sales. We make quilts. We have these incredible volunteers who make quilts all over Ontario and send them to us for our refugees. They're part of the welcome kits that your families will receive when they arrive. But we send them overseas so that these people who have fled with nothing have a blanket under which to sleep. Relief sales, those are great places to, that are these sort of local festivals that are about raising awareness and funds for our overseas relief efforts. So these are just some ways that, some other ways to remain engaged in the process while you wait for your family to arrive.
And I think it's truly incredible that MCC is an organization that is both responding locally but also internationally to the complexity of many of the situations that refugee source countries are facing. And so it's incredible to be a part of an organization that really takes a holistic approach to this refugee crisis by both enabling groups to respond locally and internationally. And so that's something that we get to do together. So just in closing, given our growing wait list of groups waiting to be matched and the dramatically reduced numbers of new BVOR profiles being made available, we have put on hold taking on any new sponsorship groups for the time being. This decision will be revisited at the end of May. And so if you know someone interested in sponsoring with MCC at this time, please have them be in touch with us again in early June as we will revisit what the program looks like at that point. So Moses, at this time.
Oh, I've got a few questions that are
Oh.
popping out here. I see one. What is a G number, and when is it provided? The G number is one of the identifier numbers for the family. So we have a profile number that's attached to them. So that's what we start out with when we don't have names, and then it's the identifier for that family. Once we get their names and so on, we receive their G number as well. It's their visa office number. And so we get that when we get the information for the sponsorship papers, and you will see it on the undertaking to sponsor that you will receive.
Mm-hmm. The other question here is, are timelines similar for BVOR and named cases, or are they different?
They're different.
Very different. The reason being is that BVOR cases are pre-screened, pre-processed, and put onto the matching list when they are almost travel ready or travel ready. And so they have already undergone the determination of, yes, they meet the criteria for a convention refugee, yes, they are eligible to come to Canada, and yes, they are about to pass or have passed the medical and security checks. Whereas named cases, you complete the permanent residency application for that specific refugee family or refugee individual here, and the moment you submit that application, that is when they begin the processing of that case. So timelines for named cases are often much longer than the BVOR. It's hard to say. It truly depends on where the refugee currently is, which visa office will process their case. Feel free to be in touch with us if you have a question about that. But yes, named cases are often much longer than the BVOR wait.
And one more question. Can you switch a sponsorship once you are matched to an already arrived GAR without housing? No. I mean, that's the very, very short and uncomplicated answer. No. First of all, to provide a slightly longer answer, government-assisted refugees are not available for sponsorship. They're already sponsored by the government. And they receive resettlement services through government agencies. What they lack that your families will get is that connection and that strong tie into community. And so when we say one thing that you can do to get involved now is to assist a government-assisted refugee, is to get involved in that settlement process and help to provide community for this family. Sometimes if you're a group that has gone ahead and you have housing, but you don't know when you'll be matched or when your family will arrive, contact a resettlement center if you're willing to give that apartment or that house up to an already existing government assisted refugee newcomer family that has already arrived. And if you've heard about the refugees in hotels, they're all government-assisted refugees because of that housing shortage, and they're looking for housing. So you can't, quote-unquote, switch a sponsorship to a government-assisted refugee because they're already sponsored by the government. But that doesn't mean that you can't get involved in some way with them.
Mm-hmm. Great. I think that's all the questions we've received so far.
And we're being very mindful of the time. We do want to give Moses a moment for some closing remarks. He's been very gracious and very quiet. So, we didn't give him a chance to get in edgewise. So, Moses, are you still there?
Yes, and thanks for unmuting me. Thanks to you both, Kaylee and Peggy, for this great presentation. I just want to conclude this webinar by saying thanks to you all. Thanks for spending the rest of your evening with us. We thank you for your willingness to dedicate your resources and for opening your communities to refugees. The unprecedented response to the refugee crisis is something that we have not witnessed in the recent history of this program. For us, prior to September 3rd, we were knocking at the doors of our supporting churches to roll out the welcome carpet. And we are very thankful that many of those doors opened. In September, the story changed as doors that we had never knocked before swung open. We are working with over 200 groups, and almost half of those groups have not been matched. In a world with over 14 million refugees, the thought that we have groups waiting and with no refugees to sponsor is mind-boggling. Having said that, though, I want to commend the efforts of our current government in welcoming over 25,000 Syrian refugees in the past few months. This is a time like no other, and I want to appreciate all of you for the generosity you have demonstrated. Frankly, I hate the limbo that we are all caught in, but I assure you that we are in this journey together. We are following up on cases that are stuck in process and communicating the desire for increased referrals. One of our groups that has an apartment ready, but with their case stuck in process, asked the question, how can our good intentions have led to this? We empathize with that group and all others that are caught in a similar predicament. As I've already mentioned, we are working together with you from the start of this process to its sweet end. Thanks for partnering with MCC. May God's will continue to move through you and throughout the world to bring hope to refugees. This is a hopeful evening, and thank you.